Another one of my favorite Geophagus species, the Steindachneri, stands out for a variety of different reasons. The males get a really big red hump and they have unique coloration in their body. They're Geophagus, so they have the same unique sand sifting behaviors, which is really fun to watch and keeps your sand looking pristine. There are some important things to keep in mind with the Steindachneri that we're going to talk about today, so let's dive right in. In my 180-gallon aquarium, I have South American cichlids, one of which is my female Geophagus Steindachneri. She's about 4 years old now and roughly 6 inches in length. Geophagus Steindachneri are South American cichlids, and they are native to the Colombia and Venezuela region in South America. The Steindachneri is a type of Geophagus which translates to earth eater, and they will display some very interesting behavior in your aquarium. Like most Geophagus species, they'll sift through the sand, constantly looking for leftover food, and in turn keeping it looking spotless. It's really fun to watch that behavior. They're always really hard at work, and I really like keeping my sand really pristine. The Steindachneri is also called the red hump earth eater, since males do get a pronounced red nuchal hump as they mature. Females do not get this hump, and you can see my female has a slight red marking on the head, but no hump. The Steindachneri is not to be confused with the redhead topos, which definitely look much different, but are sometimes mixed up due to the redhead and red hump comparison. I've even seen them mislabeled at some of my local fish stores before. But the Steindachneri looks much different. It gets a more yellow and tan base to their body, with some metallic green and black chipping as well. When on darker substrate, that color pattern will definitely stand out a bit more. Although they may not have the bright colors as some of the Geophagus species, they still have some very unique distinctions with that red hump on the males and the protruding mouths. Similar to other Geophagus species, they can be slower growers when you're comparing them to other cichlids, but if you're patient and you let these fish grow into adults, they'll look better and better each day. As full-grown adults, these Steindachneri will usually max out around 7 to 8 inches, with some topping out a bit smaller. Due to this medium to large max size, I would recommend a decent sized tank as well. I wouldn't recommend keeping the adult Steindachneri in anything less than a 55-gallon tank, but a 75-gallon or larger would be preferred. You may be able to keep the Steindachneri in slightly smaller tanks as they're growing out, but once they hit that 7 to 8 inch range, you'll really need that 75-gallon or larger. Mine is in a 180-gallon tank since it's with so many other tank mates, so if you're planning on getting a group of Steindachneri or keeping them with a community, that bigger tank is definitely more necessary. One thing that stands out to me about the Steindachneri is its temperament. Compared to other Geophagus species, I would say they're on the more aggressive and territorial end. My female here chases other fish around sometimes, and it's probably the most aggressive in this 180-gallon tank. It's not been too bad in a tank of this size, since the extra space does help that out a lot. I've found that you'll have the best luck keeping them if they're solo, in pairs, or if you have a group of 5 or more. It's much easier to manage that aggressive nature if you have more females to males. Since Geophagus Steindachneri are South American cichlids, their ideal tank parameters are going to be lower pH and softer water, along with tropical temperatures. For pH, anywhere from 6 to 7 is ideal, while temps can range from the mid 70s to lower 80s Fahrenheit. I have hard water and high pH in my area, but my Steindachneri has done just fine. It's been growing steadily and it's definitely healthy. In my opinion, if you keep consistent water parameters in a cycled tank with regular water changes, keeping your nitrates levels low, the Steindachneri should do great long term even if they aren't in their ideal parameters. And as mentioned, Geophagus Steindachneri are sand sifters, so that sand substrate is highly recommended. Out of all the Geophagus I have kept, the Steindachneri seems to be the hardest worker when it comes to sand sifting, so this is especially necessary for keeping them. Gravel could also potentially damage their gills, so keep that in mind. The ideal setup for the Steindachneri would include sand with some driftwood, rocks, and live plants. They usually won't eat the live plants, but you will want to keep them firmly planted or tied down in case they're digging around too much and uprooting the plants. but given their minimum tank size, their tank setup, and their slightly aggressive temperament, there are some tank mate options for them, especially when it comes to different cichlids. The Severum is one of my favorite combinations for all of the Geophagus species since they share many tank requirements and they aren't overly aggressive for their size. Another great choice is the electric Blue Acara. Geophagus, Severums, and electric Blue Acaras make for the best trio in my opinion. They'll give you a variety of colors in your tank, behaviors, and body shapes. You may want to be careful adding other geo species with your Steindachneri. Geophagus topos would likely be a good mix along with the Spheni, maybe the Braziliensis, and a few others could potentially work, but just be careful with that and have a backup option to move fish around if you're going to go that route. The Steindachneri could be a little too aggressive if you don't have a tank size that can handle it. Overall, with different cichlids, I would just recommend other South American cichlids that don't get too aggressive. I think they can also hold their own with Oscars, with chocolate cichlids, with true parrot cichlids. Some of those bigger, semi-aggressive South American cichlids I think would be great options as well. Outside of just cichlids, there are some other tank mates that would be great. The silver dollars are always good options for South American cichlids. Denison barbs would be another great option, and some of your medium to large tetras like the bleeding heart tetra, the Colombian tetra could definitely work. I found that they do just fine with some of the smaller catfish species, and a lot of the plecos will work, including the bristlenose pleco, the leopard frog pleco, and some of your more exotic species as well. When it comes to feeding, the Geophagus Steindachneri is not a picky eater in my opinion. I provide a variety of foods and they've eaten everything that I've given them. My recommended diet for the Steindachneri is a high quality pellet, flake food, and an occasional frozen food, such as brine shrimp or bloodworms. Steindachneri will do best with that smaller size pellet that sinks quickly since it will provide that natural behavior for them of sifting the sand and getting those pellets. As I always do, I will add links in the description for all the products and food that I use. And then when it comes to breeding the Geophagus Steindachneri, it is very simple. They are known to be very easy to breed. I would say if you're doing everything right, you have a cycled tank, you're doing your water changes, eventually they will breed. You'll have the most luck if you have a group of them with a male or two and 4 or 5 different females. You'll likely have breeding action very soon in your tank. When they are successful, the females will usually be the ones mouth brooding. They will take the fry into their mouth for protection and safety, and they'll usually do that until the fry are too big to stay in its mouth. If you do have fry, you could use some crushed up pellets or flakes, and the fry will do just fine with those different dry foods. So I hope you found that information on the Steindachneri helpful. If there are any other cichlids you'd like to see a care guide on, leave those down in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.